this may be wonderful, it may not, but we're going to have a chat as the next episode of the Enterprise Digital Podcast. I'm with Ian Aitchison as ever.
I am here. Hello.
And also David Wright from SDI.
Hi.
How are you doing?
It's really good. It's been really trying couple of days of meeting people, speaking to people, smiling, which has been great. Don't normally do that.
Good. You're not a big smiler.
Not a big smiler, but over the last couple of days, spent a lot of time smiling, talking to people, just enjoying getting back into the cut and thrust of what this wonderful industry is all about.
And has that been what sort of conversations have you been having? Let's put it that way.
Honestly, very engaging conversations, right? A lot of people want to know what we're doing now, right now. What you got planned, what you do now. So a lot of conversations about, not so much about how can you help, more about how can I get involved? What are you doing? What are you doing next? Which is really interesting. And you think of that in a community capacity, I think that's a really powerful conversation. It isn't about, and for me it never is about, you need this, you can buy that. It's about, listening, understanding, sharing. That's the important thing for me. So a lot of those types of conversations, which is great.
So do you think the community that SDI has always brought together has come out of the pandemic stronger, the same, faster, bigger?
It's really good question. I think we've done a number of partnered research reports recently, and I think if you were to look at them, and they're sort of between 6 and maybe 3 to 6 months old. There's a lot of really positive stories in there. A lot of positive stories, and I do more now. I speak more to practitioners directly as well, and I don't think there's any other than managing demand and workload and managing the sort of logistics of some of that changes. Obviously, some of the stuff like working from home, hybrid working, some of the stuff around how people have moved quicker, made changes quicker. Some of the stories about people who may have been change disablers or inhibitors in organizations now becoming enablers, and people who want change much faster. I think generally there aren't many bad stories, aren't many negative stories. They've all generally been really positive, and people have seen it as a positive change for what they do, and the organization that they work for have seen it as a perception changer as well. They've seen what IT and support is all about. So it's been really, really positive. You can't take away from the fact that this has touched people's lives in some of the most sensitive ways you can ever think about. But the positive aspect of what we've seen community-wise has been unbelievable. It's been a key enabler. It's taken away, and if I was going to put a finger in the air, it's taken away about between 5 and 7 years of not having COVID for me. It's sort of accelerated where we are right now by about 5 to 7 years. Now that sounds a bit odd. We've got no data to back that up, but that's my feel. That's my feel on it. I reckon we're at least sort of five years ahead of where we would have been without it.
That's interesting that you have that perspective, because, and I've heard a number of different takes on that, which are pro and con, if you like. But I suppose the lasting one that I've heard is this around, we still need to do a bit more around the perception and the value and all, where we sit, but it's come on a hell of a long way. And I mean, I suppose SDI and Service Desk is at the front of that, isn't it? So you're going to get a lot of that stuff at the back. Still, sometimes maybe a little bit. How fast have we moved? We spent a lot of time running around changing things, the way people work in terms of their interface. Are we changing the fundamental things as well? It's a bit of a slow, and that's where the experience stuff comes in, and it takes longer to look at the data and do all that kind of stuff. But I don't know what.
Well, I think it's really interesting, right? So we did some research specifically around the impact of COVID-19 on the perception of the business in relation to IT services and end users. And I've got the data. It's freely available. 62% and 65% of the respondents in the data said that from a business perspective and from a service desk perspective, the perception had changed positively. Absolutely, just change the way that an organization thinks. So there is, I think you're right, there is an element of understanding about actually they are adding value, or they are doing stuff, they are helping. We understand their challenge, but they're doing a great job. without seeing all that stuff behind it. So there's a sort of superficial feel about it. I talk about, whether how long that will last, I don't know. But if it's there, yes.
Yeah.
If it's there, I say to leaders in IT and IT support, use that, lever it, use it, ride on that wave of perception change. Continue to promote the value you're delivering. Continue to focus on the customer. Continue to put, just reinforce it. Continue to reinforce it. So there is definitely an opportunity, but I think you're right. There is that honeymoon sort of period.
Continue is interesting as well, because something I think we learnt on our podcast over recent months, the last year, has been how the pandemic has driven organisations to make changes really quickly.
Yeah.
They had to make changes quickly. So none of the big slow process. It's just like, well, we're just going to have to do it.
Yes.
Just do it. Make that change. Redesign that self-service portal, implement that automation, use different tools. You just have to do it. And he talks about continuing. If we're swinging back to normal, the community of employees, the end users, the customers of service, they're going to be expecting us to continue to be decisive and quick and move fast, not to go back to bureaucracy and slow process, not to go back to the old way, because we've been driven into a new way and everybody likes it.
Again, it's really interesting. We covered that in the research as well. This is back from October, so this was sort of a reflection on the impact, right?
Yeah.
And we asked that question. So what are you going to be focusing on now? How's strategy changed? And part of the top 3 or top 4 of what we're going to change and how we're going to act was exactly that. So we're going to continue the momentum that we've realised and how we do stuff, but also we're going to maintain this agility. So that was key, and that's across a number of different role cohorts as well, right? So it's in there. Whether that is a reality or not, because again, the honeymoon thing, whether that actually is borne out, or whether some organisations will want to go back to a more traditional approach, I think that's down to culture and leadership, But I think
We've been dragged kicking and screaming to be easier to do business with. I mean, that's one thing we've always suffered from, isn't it? It's like, well, they kind of know what they're talking about, but ask them for something small and it takes 6 months, or you're going to fill out 1,000 forms. So just by the nature of what's happened, we've had to become more easy to. So it's going to be. I mean, it would be seriously retrograde to chuck that away now, wouldn't it? And with all the goodwill that's. There. But I mean, just sort of looking forward then, and I guess particularly from a service desk perspective for now, where is the future of that? I mean, there's a lot of talk for some years about, what's the evolution of the service desk? Has it become less of a function than a capability?
Yeah.
Is it going to be like the Carlsberg ads where the phone only rings once in a blue moon because everything's working? What's the SDI take on that? Where does the industry need to be going to really fulfil its destiny?
Over the last couple of years, what's been brilliant to do is change the shape on how we engage with community. Thought leadership, thought collaborators, and a lot of people, when we look at organizations, I won't say the name, but one multinational, huge organization, their approach to moving from information workers who are process driven, driven by KPIs and how efficient they are, driven by occupancy, driven by those kinds of metrics, driven by SLAs, how they're moving from an information worker to knowledge workers. Because as you release, automation, AI, machine learning, it's happening. Again, part of the research that we did, if you look at the strategy and enablers, high numbers around that, machine learning, AI, that's where people are going, right? So if you look at the relationship between that and what the service desk looks like, and not just the service desk, the enterprise, becoming more effective, more efficient, releasing work, repetitive stuff is going to give more time. And I think organizations will need to wrestle with, do we release that time from cost efficiencies, or do we use that time? Do we use that time proactively? And one organization we saw understand this move from the information worker to the knowledge worker, where maybe a third or to half of a role would be work, and the rest would be related to knowledge and learning. So they've incorporated KCS, they brought in KCS, trained over 18,000 employees in the organisation at KCS, which has meant, right, a change in culture, change in organisational culture around knowledge. So it's no longer a hoarding, collective power-related one. It's about contribution, about sharing. I'm finished.
There's more.
There's more. Right?
Okay.
1.5 million new knowledge articles created in one quarter alone. No, that's the organisation. Over 18,000 people have been trained in KCS, and a change in culture. And those articles have been viewed 750,000 times by customers. It's an absolute shift. So I see the not only the service desk organisations moving either down the direction of getting rid of people in relation to cost efficiencies and losing brain power, or harnessing that in a different way and joining the organisation up more effectively and using the technologies to become more assistive, to become more unified, to become more. That's what I say, and I don't think it's just the service desk. I think that's the whole organisation.
It's KCS that talk about, and I've used this quote before, and I still use it. I love it. It's a great quote. They talk about not serving Big Mac and fries over and over again. They're moving to a model where the Big Mac and fries is automated, and the knowledge workers are experts that are creating filet mignon and dauphinoise potatoes. They're doing gourmet value work because you automate away the repetitive and the simple and the basic, and that's been a big KCS thing for a long time, and I think we see it there and beyond.
But I think again that accelerating factor, that catalyst, has changed the way in which organisations now are trying to think about what the future means. There is a change. I see things like enterprise service management as a step towards the future of work, and I see that the shift from that manual firefighting, reactive model that we currently have into something that is more proactive, more unified, more centralised, more about assistive. And that needs a change in culture, and it needs to change how people work. So it's very, very interesting. There's a lot of brilliant organisations out there thinking about this. And I'm really interested to see what the next 6 to 12 months, 2 years means for the future of work.
Well, maybe we'll talk about that in a year's time and see where we've gone.
If I get
in true podcast tradition, Ian will now ask you a serious. This has all been fluff so far, but now it's.
This is all the preamble. It's a preamble to the most important question. And the most important question is, as I know that you know well, because you are a regular listener of the Enterprise Digital Podcast, you'll know about our bar. And we have a virtual bar upon which every one of our guests brings and places their recommended drink for our audience. So if you were buying our audience, all of them, a drink, what would that drink be?
I think mine's done. I think mine's done already. I think it's been done. It's Negroni.
Yes,
I think it's been done, right?
But that's okay.
But if I could add another one, maybe. So I'm a recent Negroni fanatic. It's a crazy drink. But if I was going to add another one, it probably would be something called Cwtch. And Cwtch is Welsh. Cwtch means sort of cuddles. Cwtch means a little place where a dog sort of naps. It's a Cwtch, right?
Okay.
It's a number of things.
Okay.
It really means sort of a bit of a homely
right. Yeah.
And there's a Welsh brewery that makes a red ale, which is beautiful, and it's called Cwtch. So I'd probably say, if I needed to say, a pint of Cwtch.
Welsh red ale.
Yes, it's beautiful.
It's ale,
Ale,
I was thinking dog wee.
Yeah.
I was thinking
Yes.
the way that was going was he's not selling this, but a red ale sounds good.
Yeah.
We've had nut brown ale.
We have had, yes.
Now we've got red ale.
Probably had a blonde ale. I don't know.
And a pale ale, I'm sure.
Yeah, we have had pale ale.
So many ales.
Many ales.
Okay.
Many ales.
Dave, thank you very much for joining us, and we kept it pretty sensible, I think.
It was actually.
It's
slightly disappointing.
Reasonably sensible.
But not going to lie.
So thank you, and we'll see you again.
Good. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.